Hello and welcome back to Hank's Yarncast. My name is Casey. I'm the owner and operator of Hank's Yarn Parlour in Belfast, Northern Ireland. Thank you so much for joining me. You're very welcome. Just where I chat a little bit about any shop news and what I've been knitting on. This month, almost said week there, this month I wanted to chat a little bit also about the game of wool, which has been running for a couple of weeks now. I just want to have a little bit of a chat about that, which I'll do at the end of the podcast. It's been some interesting reactions from people all over. I've been chatting a lot to people in the shop about it, and also a little bit through our social channels and just kind of online general reactions to it. So we'll get into that a little bit later, but I wanted to start off by first letting you know what's going on in the shop. So there's a couple of classes coming up. First of which is our buffalo sock class. So I don't know why I keep saying we as if there's someone else here. There's not. So I run this class, had run this class at the kind of end of October, beginning of November, and there is another bout of it coming up next week because it was so popular, but there are still a few spaces left to book in that. So this is the buffalo sock. This is my own pattern, so it's a stranded colorwork sock with a German short row heel. So in the class, you'll kind of learn a little bit of tips and tricks on how to manage stranded colorwork. This is not really complicated, so even if you've never done stranded colorwork before, great place to start. Also really great if you're brand new to socks, or maybe you've already got some experience knitting socks but haven't tried the German short row heel before. I'm going to show you how to work that. There is also, I'm working on this one from the class as well. It's just another colorway. I do also have kits for these in the shop. If you aren't local, aren't able to get down for a class, but fancy making a pair, you can pick up one of these in our online shop. So they come in kind of the classic black and red. They come in this sort of green and orange colorway. There's also a two-tone, like light blue, dark blue colorway, and a light purple, dark purple colorway as well. The next round of that class is running from the 20th of November, and then it skips a week, and the second class is on the 4th of December. 7 to 9 p.m. It's £40. So that gets you all of your materials, the 2 nights of classes, and yeah, so that is coming up. The next one, there is actually a crochet workshop coming up for our wee willy hats, which is a little kind of Christmas decoration. I'm afraid that one is full up. You can keep an eye on our website. If anyone cancels in the next couple of days, then a space may open up, which I'll definitely post on socials as well, but it's been pretty popular. I don't think there is likely that a space will open up, but you never know. But if you're a knitter, we do have a Christmas ornament for knitters coming up as well. So this is to make some little scrappy baubles with this beautiful swirl pattern. So you can use kind of as many colors as you like in these. This one I've used 4 colors, this one I've only used 2. But they're really, really excellent for scraps. So a little bit different format of this class because I usually include all the materials. But this class, you want to bring your scraps along. So it's just basically designed to kind of get rid of and use any little scrappy bits that are in your stash. Now that could be kind of like a 4-ply sock weight kind of yarn. It could be double knitting. It could be Aran. Those are kind of the 3 that it works best with. If you have, or anything kind of in between, any sport, lace weight you might want to double up. Chunky might be a little bit on the large side for the baubles that I'm going to have. But if you can find yourself a bigger bauble, then yeah, chunky would probably work anyway. So we can make this pattern work for multiple yarn weights anyway, is what I'm getting at. So bring down your scraps, and you want to bring down, you can use straight or circular needles. So these are knit as a flat panel and seamed together. So you could use a circular needle and just knit back and forth, or you can use straights. It's not a very wide panel either. You could probably even get away with DPNs if that's all you can spare at the moment. So yeah, bring some scraps, bring some needles that kind of match your scraps. So if you're using like for instance, this is an Aran weight that I used, and I actually knit this on a 4.5. I normally would knit Aran on a 5. I knit this one on a 5. This is also like the same kind of weight yarn. This is also Aran, and it obviously on a bigger needle the gauge is bigger, so it came out bigger. I did get a bigger bobble for it, but it's still a little bit baggy. This one's actually coming out a little bit more like apple kind of shape than round, but I could put some extra stuffing in there around the bobble. So anyway, I will provide several different sizes of baubles, so don't worry about the bauble. The bauble will be provided. Just bring down your yarn scraps and your needles, and we'll just have a really lovely festive evening, really relaxed, making simple Christmas decorations. So that is on the 3rd of December, and it's just a tenner because you're providing most of your own materials. So yeah, that's shop news for the most part. Actually, there is one more thing. I did do a social media post on this, but I should probably just remind you guys. But I'm super unprepared and haven't brought it out, so bear with me for just one moment. Right back. Okay. A little bit more prepared now. So you may have seen on my socials that I have got some samples from Eru Yarns, and they are based in the Republic of Ireland, and they're basically on a mission to kind of revitalize the wool industry on the island. So they are working with a whole load of different Irish farmers that are developing flocks of sheep, primarily blue-faced Leicester and what they're calling Emerald Romney. Romney and blue-faced Leicester obviously originated well, the Romney at least is from Kent. I actually, off the top of my head, not 100% sure about blue-faced Leicester. The name would suggest somewhere in the Leicester region. Not 100% sure on that one, but in any case, so these farmers are starting to raise sheep that have more of the kind of softer qualities that we would look for in knitting yarn. A lot of the sheep that kind of would have been brought up here natively even a few hundred years ago are hardier breeds with much rougher fleece on them. So from what I understand, the Romney is a really good sheep to produce for both meat and fleece. So that's wonderful, because eventually a sheep, hopefully we're not, you know what, I'm not even going to comment on the sheep meat industry, but I just kind of think it's nice that we can get more than one resource out of that animal. Anyway, so if you saw my social post, I kind of showed these off a little bit. This is their this is the Aran weight. This is their DK weight. So both of these mix of blue-faced Leicester and Romney. Blue-faced Leicester you're probably familiar with if you've knit with British breeds before. Romney also is a longer staple from what I understand, and it's got kind of really good for nice good stitch definition, but that also that longer staple should help it wear a little bit better, so it should pill less. And they do come in some super wonderful shades, so I would really love some help. I'm super excited to bring these in. I would really love some feedback before I commit on what you guys think about the colors, and you can have a closer look at this shade card on our social media, on our Instagram, TikTok, and Facebook. It was posted everywhere. So I'd just like to know what sort of colors out of these are your faves, and also I'd really, really love to bring in both the DK and the Aran weight yarn, but I don't think I'm going to be able to bring them in both at once. So if you have a preference, we're going to have a little bit of a vote on whether we should bring in the DK weight. Sorry, that's this one. They're the same fiber, it doesn't matter, you can't tell from there. So DK weight or Aran weight. They do also have a chunky, which they also sent me a sample of. This is gorgeous as well. I probably won't start with the chunky though, just because I don't get as many people looking for this. I think that these are more versatile yarn weights. So probably going to start with that. But let me know what your thoughts are. If you're local, please come down and have a squish at these. They are gorgeous. They are super soft. They're not kind of the regular rustic sheep breeds that we think about at all, but they do all come from Irish farms. And I think that's absolutely wonderful. And they're also spun in the mill in Donegal. So trying to keep it as local as possible. And I have been on a mission looking for locally produced yarn, and it's like particularly locally produced yarn that is actually kind of like on the softer side, because I do have some local stuff in the shop already, but it's definitely more of a rustic Donegal tweed kind of thing that would be more suitable for like fisherman jumpers, like outerwear type thing, jackets, that sort of thing. This would be a little bit more suitable for next to skin jumpers. So please do come down and have a squish if you're local, and let me know in the comments if you like what you think about the colors. I'll hold this up one more time, but as I say, you can definitely find a little bit more of a close-up version. Get my hand, I don't even know if that is focusing. Story of my life on this podcast, guys. So super, super excited to be bringing these in. I'm not sure. I'm really hoping they'll be in before Christmas. Fingers crossed. If we can make up our minds on colors and weight, then hopefully I'll be getting them in stat. One more thing that I actually forgot to mention is this one of these hanks has the QR code. Oh yeah, they both do. So each of these, what I absolutely love about this, has a little QR code that you can scan, and you can trace the farm that fleece came from. So on their website, they've actually got a little map with all the farms marked out on it where all of their fleeces come from, and you can trace right down per hank where that fleece came from. So it's traceable, it's sustainable, it's local. I love it. What's not to love about that? Right, we get into the knitting portion. Don't have an awful lot of finished objects at the moment. One reason being my last finished object has actually gone away. So last time on the podcast, I was just about ready to finish up the jean cardigan for my cousin Susie's good friend Julie, and she came and collected it already. So it's finished, it's gone. It fit her absolutely beautifully, so I'll throw a photo of that up here. I'm really pleased with how it turned out, and she seems to be as well, so huzzah! Great all around. Final notes on that pattern now that I've finished it. I enjoyed it. I thought it was well written. Apart from the chart is slightly unconventional because it only includes kind of every other row of the chart, only the right side rows, so you got to fill in the wrong side rows. I just didn't really register with me when I read the pattern the first time and started doing my swatch, and I was thinking the swatches, it just looks weird, it doesn't look like the pattern, what have I done? So I had to go back and read that again, and once I kind of figured that out, that was okay. So just my only kind of niggle about that, and it makes sense because otherwise it's really hard to fit that chart on a page. So I kind of get why it's condensed. I don't begrudge her that. It's just my fault for not reading the pattern properly in the first place. Yeah, I thought that the rest of the instructions were really straightforward, nothing that made me scratch my head or anything. It came out the size and shape I expected it to. There's one thing that I modified, was the button band. And it's just kind of my preferred method of doing something, so there's absolutely nothing wrong with the way that the pattern does it. But so it's a double knit button band. You pick up all of the stitches kind of around the kind of up the front of the cardigan, around the neck and down the other side sort of thing. So you're picking up so many stitches the whole way around, and then you're casting on so many stitches to make the width of the band, and then you're kind of almost knitting it like a giant I-cord as you kind of work your way up and around. Now, that's all fine and good, but the issue that I had is when she was having you make the buttonholes, because they're vertical, so they're going kind of row-wise up the columns rather than stitch-wise, like across the row. She has you break the yarn. So she kind of knits one edge kind of up to one edge of the buttonhole, what would be the fabric on the side of the buttonhole, and then has you break the yarn and then build up the fabric on the other side of the buttonhole. Now, that's totally, it works. So there's nothing wrong with that other than you're ending up with a load of extra tails to weave in, which is not my favorite thing in the world to do. So I actually use a different method that uses yarn overs where the buttonhole should be. Now, the yarn overs do not become the buttonhole, but they kind of save extra yarn to knit, essentially. You're using that extra yarn to knit the other side of the buttonhole. I'm not explaining that very well, but I am going to link to a tutorial that I always use when I have to do these sorts of buttonholes. Really, really good. I can't remember your woman's name off the top of my head, but do check the description below. I will have a link to that tutorial if you want to learn how to do buttonholes vertically without breaking your yarn. This is my favorite way how to do a buttonhole, particularly in the double knitting bands. It works in, it doesn't have to be double knit fabric. It could be regular stockinette. It could be ribbing. Yeah, it works with most things. And I find that it actually makes one of the neatest buttonholes ever. So I adore this method. Do check it out. What else have I got finished? The only other thing that I've got finished, I've got a sock finished. Now, before I show this to you, I have to give a little spoiler alert to my partner, Andrew. If you're watching this, I love you dearly, but get lost. Don't spoil your Christmas socks, okay? Just don't. Especially because I'm going to go on a little bit of a rant about them. So, you've been warned. Okay, for everybody who's not Andrew, I have finished one half of his holiday socks. So I knit him a pair of socks every Christmas. I mean, it's not really a surprise that he's getting them. He did, in fact, pick out the yarn for this while we were on holiday in Krakow. Now, I have put the ball band to this down somewhere, as you do. Nope, not handy. Okay, so this is a Lang Yarns sock yarn. I think this is like one of their, they have kind of like different like colorway sets. I guess this one's from their mixtape collection. So the wool itself, this is a 75-25 wool and nylon mix, pretty standard sock yarn, pretty standard mix for sock. This is what it looks like in the ball. I actually had to kind of rewind this one because it comes in a standard kind of 100-gram 3-point ball, which promptly fell apart on me before I got even one sock knitted, so I had to rewind it. I mean, I center pull from pretty much all these skeins, and eventually when they get toward the end, they do tend to collapse. This one actually didn't collapse from the inside. It started falling apart around the outside of the ball. I don't know if it's just because of the way that it's been rubbing on everything in my bag. Probably. So anyway, I've rewound it, so it probably looks a little bit different than it normally would now, but you can kind of see it's like a black and white, off-white, maybe pale gray. It's kind of hard to tell, actually. mix with like little stripes of red and burgundy through it. Sorry, that's not focusing again. Come on. Yeah, I don't know, guys, if that's like looking for my face or what it's doing. Let me just see if I can convince it to. There we go. Okay. So it looks kind of cool in the ball. That's what he picked when we were in the shop. I told him to go pick whatever he wanted, and I'd make him something with it. So that's what we're doing, and we're making his socks with it. Now I've done a little bit of a contrast on the cuff. I did intend to do this on the heels and the toes as well. Like I normally like to do contrasting toes, heels, and cuffs. But just kind of as I was knitting it, I actually just decided that this would probably look better just all as one. I haven't actually decided yet because I like to do these little, like, I like to cast on my socks. These are cuffed down, by the way. So I cast on my socks with like a scrap of kind of some other color that kind of mixes in with or adds a lot of contrast, just kind of gives it a little bit of a pop. It's just kind of something fun that I like to do. Knit the black cuff, and I thought that this would kind of work really well together, but didn't actually realize how different this red that I've put on the cuff is from the red that's in this sock. This is actually like, on its own, looks like really kind of cardinal sort of red, but upon reflection, now that I've seen it next to the other reds in here, it's actually quite a bit more pinky than the red that is in here. Is a little bit more kind of orangey toned, I suppose. So they're not quite the same sort of reds. They're quite different, and I'm wondering if they're clashing a little bit too much. So I might actually end up doing some surgery on this and taking the cuff off and re-knitting it just in this yarn. I haven't totally made up my mind yet. I might just take the cast on off, or, well, cut it on. I'm not going to unpick it. Unpicking cast ons is not fun, but I might cut it off and just rebind off in the black. That's an option as well. Haven't quite decided. And I kind of need to make up my mind before I start the other socks. So, I don't know. Tell me what you guys think. I kind of like the little contrast up here, but I think this red is just kind of clashing with the rest of the sock. I know Andrew probably wouldn't care, but that's going to drive me absolutely crazy. So, yeah, not too sure. Not too sure what to do about that. The yarn itself, I don't love it, if I'm being totally honest. I don't know why this feels so different than every other sock yarn that I've ever worked with. Even this feels... It feels like acrylic, if I'm being totally honest. It has a weird feeling, and it squeaks on my knitting needles, which has actually made this a bit more of a slog to get through. Like, his socks always take me ages because he does have pretty long feet, and actually I'm looking at this right now. I made this one for him, and I'm thinking these are a little short, but no, they're not actually. They're about the same length, just one's been blocked and the other hasn't, so it's probably fine. Phew. Yeah, so I don't know. I'm not crazy about this, but I am interested to see if they get any softer once they're blocked up. They just feel rather nylon-y. I don't know. And they're a little bit fuzzy. I don't know if you'd be able to see the halo on that if I put that against my hand. I don't know. That's probably not showing up. But yeah, a little bit fuzzy, but I'm feeling more of the nylon in them than the wool. They don't feel particularly soft. Like, I wouldn't say they're scratchy, but they don't have that, I don't know. They don't have a woolly feeling to me at all. So I'm not crazy about working with them. Hopefully he will be okay with wearing these and they'll feel okay. That's my first time knitting with lying yarns, and I've always heard good things about them. So I don't know. Not gonna knock lying in general. I mean, there's a reason you hear good things about them. I just think that maybe this particular sock yarn is not really for me. Don't love it. Kind of looking forward to just getting this other sock off my plate, my hair, and not having to pick this up again. So we shall see. But yeah, I suppose next time you'll see whether or not I've decided to do surgery on that cuff. I have one other, well, active whip, if you will. So now that I've got that other commission off my plate, I've started another one. And this one is for the Nelson pullover. I'll throw that photo up again here. So I talked a little bit about this and the yarn that I was going to use on the last podcast. But I did get a chance to get it going. So this is it's top down. I've done the back and fronts and just joined them together. So it's a saddle shoulder design. So you're working each of the saddles separately to start, and then you pick up stitches on either side of them to work the back in one piece and then to work the front afterwards. And then once you've kind of knit so far, kind of down the yoke and done some increases for the armhole shaping and joined it, once you get kind of past where the armhole shaping is, and you join it in the round, and the rest of it is knit in the round all the way down. Pretty straightforward. So the body is all stockinette, and it's got these beautiful cables that go all the way down the sleeves. Sorry, this is rather dark yarn, so hopefully that's showing up okay. Yeah, it's not a complicated cable, and it's got a pretty wide open repeat, I would say. So yeah, happy enough with it so far. The only thing that's kind of weirding me out is that the neckline seems really open compared to the width of the shoulders. Now, it's working out to the correct measurements as per the schematic so far. However, yeah, I don't know. It just seemed like it's the biggest size that I'm knitting, and he does have quite broad shoulders, gentleman that I'm knitting it for. But even though, so each of the saddles is the right measurement. I have double checked all the measurements. They're the right size as per the pattern. But I'm just feeling like the neck is really, really open. So it does have this sort of like, sort of mock. It's almost like somewhere between a turtleneck and a shawl collar. It kind of crosses over at the front. And the cables go up the side of that a wee bit as well. But it's just kind of designed to be kind of like this sort of, it's not quite a cowl neck either, because a cowl neck would hang quite open as well. And it's meant to be kind of more cozy around the neck. So I'm a little bit concerned that that is just going to be too open. So I think now that I've joined under the arms and I've just ran out of that ball, that one's empty. This is usually when, after I do that join, that's normally when I would actually go back and do the sleeves. I prefer to do the sleeves before the body, just because it's easier. I mean, not that I'm going to try it on, because the recipient isn't going to be around to try it on, but it still gives me a better idea of how that jumper is going to hang once you add the sleeves to it, because it like without the sleeves, the kind of armholes and whatnot tend to sag a little bit, so you might get kind of a, if you were to try it on like that, it will probably hang lower. Then when you add the sleeves, it'll kind of pull it back up a little bit. So if I'm going to try on top-down jumpers, I prefer to do the sleeves before I do the body. Also, a little bonus to that is that then when I'm done the body, I'm done. And I feel like if I get Sleeve Island kind of out of the way closer to the beginning, then I don't feel like I'm trapped there on a mostly almost finished jumper for ages. However, considering my concerns with the neck, I think what I'm actually going to do is join in the next ball and pick up the stitches for the collar and work that section first. just to see how that's fitting. I think if it's going to be a little bit too wide, I would rather rip it back at this point and start over. And honestly, I actually think that I could get away with a little bit of surgery on this as well, because you're picking up the stitches at the saddle and then working down. I don't think it would be too much work to kind of unpick I would kind of put the second row, like not the row that I directly picked up from the saddle, kind of the next row on. I think I would just put a lifeline in there, and then I can graft those sections back onto the saddle later. But if I'm just concerned that the saddles are a little bit short, they're the right measurements for the pattern, but I just feel like they should come in a little bit closer to the neck. But they maybe need to be like an inch longer each, just to bring that in, like, I don't know, that much. But I think it's worth testing it out, sticking with the pattern, testing out how the neck is built in this one, just to see, because that, like, again, picking up the stitches for that and knitting that might also kind of bring this in a little bit this way, although I'm not sure. I don't actually want the whole thing to come in too much this way either, because as it is, the width of the overall thing right now is correct, and I don't want it to end up being kind of pulled in at the shoulders. I don't want the saddle to be sitting up here and then there be the sleeve cap is starting, like the shoulder, it should be kind of right on that point. The saddle should sit right here on the edge of the shoulder. It shouldn't be up here. It's a much better fit and it looks so much nicer. So it's the only thing kind of giving me a little bit of a wobble right now, that I'm just not 100% sure that I'm going to be happy with that. And because it's at the beginning, I would just rather figure that out first before I go on to knit the rest of the body, because it is going to be quite a large jumper and it's going to take some time, and I just don't want to get to the end of this and regret not fixing it now. So we'll knit the neck and see how it goes. I'm tempted as well that I might knit the neck, say that 10 times fast, and then I might just block what I have and kind of see how it's coming out, because I know that the blocking does affect this yarn quite a bit as well, just in terms of its drape. It doesn't really change. It didn't change a lot in my swatch in terms of like the actual stitch count or anything like that, but it did change the feel of the fabric a little bit, and it just seemed to kind of drape a little bit better once it was washed. So just to get a feel for how that's really going to turn out in the end, I think I might just block what I have once I've got the neck in and just see kind of how it's all coming together. But yeah, I am enjoying it so far. Again, pattern is fairly easy to follow. The chart is fairly simple. It's kind of 2 overlapping cables and like a 12-row repeat, and there's like 1 row of cabling in that repeat. So super easy to remember. And yeah, I don't think actually that, like, even though it's going to be quite large, I don't think the body's going to take that much time, because then it's in the round, it's stockinette, it's fairly big wool. So it's Aran, but the gauge that I'm getting on this, to be honest with you, it's verging a little bit on it's fairly dense. I'm doing this on 4.5mm needles. That's a little bit unusual for me, having to go down a needle size, but I think it's actually just because the yarn is so bulky, particularly before it has been blocked, because it's a little bit on the stiff side. Yeah, getting gauge, I for once actually had to go down a needle size, believe it or not. So yeah, that's a new one on me, but we'll see how it goes. I'll have an update for you on that in the next episode, I think. And that is all that I have been knitting on for the last little while. Kind of getting ready in the shop for Christmas. Oh God. And yeah, that's keeping me plenty busy. And also developing a few new workshops that'll be coming out in the new year. So yeah, that's all I've been knitting on at the moment. So if you want to hear me now have a little bit of a chat stroke rant about the game of wool, what my thoughts are on that. Stay tuned. That's coming up next. Okay, so I'm gonna chat to you about what I thought of the game of wool. So if you haven't seen it yet and you plan to, you might want to skip this. There is going to be some spoilers, so if you want to save yourself that, maybe go watch the show and come back and watch this later if you fancy. So my kind of, I guess, before I even watched this, so there was a call out for this show around this time last year, if I'm remembering correctly, that they were they were taking applications for the contestants. And I actually considered putting one in myself, but I didn't because there wasn't enough information about the formatting of the show. And I was really not sure about how that was going to go down, and also like if I would need to take time away from my business to do it and that sort of thing. It just didn't seem like the right sort of time for me to do it, but eagerly anticipating watching it. So I was excited but a little bit nervous when it came out because I just couldn't wrap my head around how they were going to turn this into a competition. I mean, there were quite a few different ways that they could have gone with it, and I was just thinking to myself, please God, don't let it be just a race like all these other shows are, like Bake Off and Sewing Bee. Pottery Throwdown to some extent, although I'm not as familiar with that one, so I'll just leave that one be. But yeah, I'm not sure that the format of the show where it's, oh my God, what can we knit in 12 hours is a really good way to determine Britain's best knitter. But okay, let's just go back and have a bit of a recap on what I thought about the first episode. So there's 2 episodes out now. First episode, you may have seen that I did a little social media post a few weeks ago after that came out, that I just wasn't really sure who the show was for, who it was aimed at. I think a lot of the, and perhaps now that I've watched another episode and have kind of gone back and really thought about it, I think maybe one of the biggest issues with the show is its language, the kind of vocabulary that it uses, and the fact that, okay, so get a little ahead of myself here, but so there was a major controversy over the first episode of the show because they were trying to set it up as kind of an homage to Farrell knitting, and I think that they missed the mark. I think a lot of people missed the mark. Let's be honest, guys. They missed the mark big time on that. Not, well, for a number of reasons, but first and foremost, and there has been a lot of, Shetland knitters versus Hello Halo going on the internet right now. So Hello Halo is the production company of the Game of Wool. They basically just kind of, to put it kindly, glossed over everything about Fair Isle, and it's, as far as its kind of techniques, its tradition, where it comes from, why Shetland knitters use the kind of wool that they do. I mean, I don't just mean the Shetland wool that comes off the sheep, but the fact that they're using finer, lightweight wools, 4-ply, 2-ply, that sort of thing. There is actually a reason for that, just through their heritage, just at the time that these sorts of designs and stuff were being generated and the traditions were kind of becoming a thing. They didn't have access to the abundance of yarn that we do. And you like to think that there's, thousands of sheep running around the Shetland Isles, but that actually just wasn't the case. Most crofters only kind of had maybe a handful of sheep. So to make the yarn go further, they would have been spinning finer yarns and knitting not only Farrell out of it, but also like Shetland lace as well. That's a topic for another chat. So there is also, and like I don't know kind of all the history about like the particular motifs and things like that that are in Shetland, and I'm a little bit out of my depth in that as far as Fair Isle motifs really go. But I do know that there's a difference between Fair Isle motifs and motifs from other stranded cultures, such as Latvian knitting or Norwegian or Icelandic knitting. Like they all have a tradition that has where these motifs kind of come from. And I think a few of them overlap amongst cultures, like obviously even way back when people were still traveling, those things, those ideas were still being shared. So you're going to get a little bit of kind of crossover, I think. But I think basically what it boils down to, Shetland community is really upset that the show had the opportunity, not necessarily that it needed to go in depth about it, but it did have the opportunity to educate a little bit on what the difference between Fair Isle knitting is, like what makes Fair Isle within stranded knitting specifically, what makes it Fair Isle, where does that tradition come from? I think that the show actually could have I don't want to say snuck in, but I think that there was room for that in there. There was a lot of shots in that show of just like people sitting around knitting, and like obviously you have to have a little bit of that in there, but it just there was an awful lot of opportunity, I think, to fill that space with something that would have actually been kind of a little bit more educational. And I don't think that the aim of this program is educational in the sense that they want to teach you techniques to knit. That is not the aim of this show. So if you're going to come and pick up a tidbit about the history of knitting, or maybe like the tiniest little bit of technique here and there, grand, but it's not a this is how to knit show. That's not its aim. So I'm not going to rag on it for that. Some people have been like, oh, I didn't learn anything. And that's, I mean, I guess that's fair if you were hoping to learn that. But if you're looking to actually learn how to knit, that's not the show for it, okay? Which brings me to, I suppose, my next point. I need to get away from the drama that's going on between the Shetlanders and Hello Halo, or this is going to be a very long segment. My other kind of problem that I had with it was, okay, we're going to do the Fair Isle, and they wanted to do it in chunky yarn because you have 12 hours to knit a sweater vest or a tank top, as depending on what side of the pond you come from, which obviously was also a problem for Shetlanders because you wouldn't typically use super chunky yarn. Like I just said, their tradition, they use quite fine yarns. Now, is that still, I think it's okay to take that as a little bit of a departure. I don't think that it had to be necessarily the finer yarns. I think that it could have been finer yarns and they could have knit a hat or even a cowl. I don't know why it had to be a vest. That seems kind of outrageous to me. I think that they would have been better off doing a smaller project with more appropriate sized yarn. That's my opinion. It is what it is. Now, my problem with them kind of getting into this chunky yarn is that for the first episode of a show like this, and this is also just calling back to my initial thoughts on it when I wasn't sure who it was for, I'm not sure if it's for people who are interested in getting into the craft either. If it is, this is also problematic because I know that super chunky yarn seems like a great idea if you're just starting out. If you've been thinking about picking up knitting, the idea of being able to get a nice big wool where you can see your stitches and your projects are knitting up quickly, it's kind of instant gratification. Now, the problem that I have with this is that first and foremost, the mechanics of knitting with such large yarn and needles is actually totally different to how, at least how I would normally knit. I've never seen anybody knit with 12 millimeter needles that knit the same way that they normally do on like a 4 or 5 or even a 6 millimeter needle. You know, it's the way that you would hold the needles and the yarn is totally different. It's much more physically involved to knit with materials that they're that large. And I think not a good place to start because it doesn't set you up with really good beginner habits, if you will. And I think it's going to cause problems when you start trying to get into something that is a little bit finer. So, yeah, I would not recommend such big yarn. I mean, I wouldn't recommend starting out with really fine stuff either, but I think we need to find a happy medium in the middle somewhere. When I do beginners classes, I usually start off my students with an Aran weight yarn and about a 5mm needle. It's totally manageable, it's comfortable enough in your hands, and it is plenty big enough to still be seeing your stitches. And I feel like it works up quick enough as well. Like most of my students are able to finish a pair of fingerless mitts in the 2 classes allotted. It's fine. And I think that you can't, I think the idea of knitting as an instant gratification really goes against what knitting is to begin with, which is another little kind of thing that I think I said in the beginning, that I didn't want this to be a race, because knitting isn't a race. It is it's a slow and mindful craft. And I mean, you can't really compare it to something like Bake Off, because obviously you've got so much time to, I don't know, make a batch of biscuits or cupcakes or something. Like those are, like, at a certain point in time, if you're taking too long to make them, they aren't going to turn out either. Like it makes sense that they give you 4 hours to make a great batch of biscuits. That's a reasonable time to make that thing. 12 hours to make a Fair Isle sweater vest, super unreasonable. And that's why they've had to do things like make it into super chunky yarn, because they would never get there with the regular materials for that craft. And yeah, so that's that whole first episode was really problematic for me. I didn't enjoy it at all, and then it kind of got me worried about, well, is this whole show just going to be projects on massive chunky yarn because it's all they have time to actually knit? So was a little bit nervous about that. Now I have watched the second episode, and the second episode was completely different, and I think a vast improvement. They were much more realistic, I think, about their time scales and the scale of the project they had to make in that time. They, I think, also gave a little bit more of an opportunity to adjust the pattern, if you will. So I'm sorry, I just mean from a contestant's perspective, that I feel like each of the people on the show got more of an opportunity to really put their design into the pattern itself and like the shaping of it. Whereas last week when they were making their sweater vests, it was kind of, here's your pattern to work off of, and you make a chart to go along with it, which maybe was kind of easing them into it a little bit more. Yeah, I do think that the format of the show in the second week worked a lot better. I think their group project was a little bit better as well, just in terms of trying to, first of all, make something that is just a little bit more practical, like sofa cover. Who came up with that? That it just makes no sense. And yeah, it just seemed, I feel like there's a lot about the first episode that was really ill-conceived. Second episode, I think, is it, and granted, there's a lot of sort of kinks to work out when you have a new show like this, and I get that, but sorry, I was just losing my train of thought there a little bit. My cat is at the back door trying to get in. I don't know if you can hear him scratching. Yeah, so looking forward, I think, to seeing what's going on moving forward in the show. I am a little bit nervous again about the next episode. I've seen the trailer for the next episode, and I think the next episode is primarily a crochet project. Now, I have an issue with this as well, because so after the first episode came out, there were a lot of people online saying, oh, well, where's the crochet? And now listen, I am all for equal representation in craft here, but the fact is, they are looking for Britain's best knitter. And knit and crochet are not the same craft. Are they closely related in the fact that they both make stitches out of yarn? Sure. not much beyond that. The way the stitches are made, the tools that are used to make stitches are totally different. They're not they're not really comparable. And just because you can knit doesn't mean you can crochet. They're not interchangeable skills. And already in the first couple episodes, we've had contestants, because there was a little bit of crochet involved in the second episode as well. They had to have a crochet element in their little doggy jumpers that they were designing. Now, I agree that it's nice to see crochet represented, but I don't know that that's the right place for it. I think that's creating a lot of confusion that the two are connected, that they're this, and like, yeah, they're both textile arts, but so is sewing, and so is weaving, so is spinning. Like, where are we going to draw a line about where you just need to knit? Yeah, I find that really problematic as well. I don't really know how to come to terms with that. And there has been already some of the contestants on the show have said, oh well, I'm not a very good knitter, or I primarily crochet. And a lot of them are like, I've never crocheted in my life. And I'm like, okay, well, why do we have both knitters and crocheters on the show? Like, why? The point of the show is to find Britain's best knitter, whatever that means. But I'm pretty sure being the best knitter should not inherently involve crochet. They are just separate things. My final thought, I'm gonna go back to this just episode 1. My final kind of little niggle that I'm having as well is that the way that the show is edited is also a little bit problematic, because okay, give you an example. This is kind of what stood out to me in the first episode, was that, so Gordon, really lovely man from Scotland, I believe, knit his sweater vest, and he was the only contestant that decided he was going to steek the armholes in his vest, and possibly the neck. Can't recall if we got up to the neck, because anyway, he didn't finish his vest. And the way that the show was made, and the way that, like, the editing, all the different kind of takes, camera angles, the dialogue, that sort of thing, was all edited to really vilify steeking. And let's not even get into the language thing with steeking and shell, and we got to get over that. We need to accept that steeking in modern language as it pertains to knitting is a term that we have been using recently to infer cutting up the knitting. If you have another term for that, Shetlanders, fantastic, but you don't. So I don't know how it's just the language that he used to describe what he was doing, and I think it's fair. I think that the term, while steek actually refers to the column of stitches that are there to accommodate the cutting, steeking has been kind of turned into a verb just through modern language. That's not my problem. My problem is that they really vilified this as making it seem like he didn't finish his vest because he cut it, and that it unraveled, and that chunky yarn isn't suitable for steeking, and all of this hoopla about the steeking. Now, there was an article that came out shortly after that episode aired, and Gordon actually tells us that he didn't finish because he made a mistake previously and had to rip out about 20 rows of his knitting and reknit it. That's why he didn't finish. So I'm really upset that rather than just being honest about the process, they were like, oh no, steeking, you can possibly do that, and it ruined his vest, and this is why he didn't finish. And it's just, it just really rubbed me the wrong way. Because steeking, and I'm sure especially if you're a new knitter, the idea of cutting your knitting is absolutely terrifying. And believe me, the first time I did it, yeah, it was terrifying. But you know what? I have since steeked so many things. There are so many patterns now that I would actually modify to have a steek, because I would rather knit color work in the round than knit mosaic or knit color work flat. I just find it easier. I'm not afraid of the steek anymore. And I don't want other people to be either, because I think it really opens the possibilities of what you can do with your knitting if you know how to steek. So I would encourage you to learn how to do that if you've been thinking about it. definitely a good skill to kind of have in your arsenal. It just allows you to do an awful lot more with your knitting. And yeah, so final thoughts. I'm gonna keep watching it. I'm really enjoying all the interactions that the actual contestants have on there, and I've loved listening to their backstories, and I think they're all really interesting people. So I'm kind of a little bit invested in the show for their sake. As much as the production kind of rattles me, I'm really interested to see where all of these people are going with their knitting, and what they're going to do throughout the show, and how they're going to react to certain situations, what they're going to come up with to fit into the wild parameters of the show. So I'm definitely still interested to keep watching. I'm going to keep watching. Yeah, I guess we'll just have to see where it goes from here. So let me know what you think about it in the comments if you've seen it. Let me know if there's anything about it that you've maybe been thinking about watching it. Are you a bit nervous about watching it because of all the hoopla that's been going on about it? Yeah, just give me your thoughts in the comments. I'd love to hear. And if you're still here and watching, thanks so much for joining me. If you've enjoyed your time here, please do remember to hit the like and subscribe button, and then you'll know when the next episode of the podcast comes out. And yeah, thanks so much for joining me, and I'll see you next time.